It spread throughout most of Europe, including Portugal, and even Fatima, where Francisco and Jacintha caught it. They became very ill and were confined to their beds. When people visited Francisco and Jacintha in their rooms, they commented they felt different in their presence, that it was like being in church.
While he was ill, Francisco was always joyful. I asked him if he was suffering a lot. He said, "Quite a lot, but never mind. I am consoling our Lord and I am going to heaven." I asked him not to forget me once he's there, and asked if Our Lady could take me as well. However, he said he wouldn't ask for that, as I well know Our Lady does not want me to come yet.
I'm going to confession so that I can receive Holy Communion and then die. I want you to tell me if you have seen me commit any sin.
You disobeyed your mother a few times.
That's true. I remember that. Now go and ask Jacintha if she has seen me commit any.
I asked Jacintha, could she remember any sins that Francisco had committed so that he could confess them? She thought a while, then said that before Our Lady appeared, he stole some money from our father to buy a music box, and that he threw some stones at some boys. When I gave him the message from his sister, he said that he had already confessed those. The night he died, I said, "Goodbye, Francisco. If you go to heaven tonight, don't forget me." At this, he caught hold of my hand and said, "I won't forget. Be sure of that."
Francisco did not recover and died on the 4th of April 1919. He was buried in the cemetery near the parish church. Jacintha was not able to attend Francisco's funeral, but stayed alone in bed and prayed. She missed her brother greatly.
Jacintha suffered greatly when Francisco died, and remained silent for long periods of time. When I asked her what she was thinking about, she said Francisco. I said to her, "It won't be long before you go to heaven too. But what about me?" She said, "You poor thing. Don't cry. I'll pray lots for you. It's what Our Lady wants for you. If it were me, I'd gladly stay and suffer more for sinners."
There were hopes among her family and friends that she would recover, but she knew that this would not happen. Jacintha had offered her sufferings for the conversion of sinners. Our Lady had appeared to Jacintha. When Jacintha did not recover, she was taken to a REM hospital, where they performed an operation to relieve fluid on her lungs. However, this failed and she returned to Fatima. She then had an open wound which had to be dressed daily.
People came to visit us from a distance. They seemed to sense something supernatural about Jacintha.
Our Lady visited Jacintha 3 times and said that she would go to hospital in Lisbon, and there she would die alone. However, she should not be afraid, for Our Lady promised to come to her and take her to heaven. No one took Jacintha's talk of a hospital in Lisbon seriously, for the martyr family could not afford such an expense. However, Dr. Formigao said a wealthy baron and his friends would take care of all the expenses, but she would never see Lucia again. After travelling to Lisbon by train with her mother, Jacintha was first admitted into an orphanage while awaiting admittance into hospital. There Jacintha would have further visits from Our Lady. And again, when Jacinta was admitted into hospital, she was able to ask Our Lady the question which troubled her the most.
Why do souls go to hell?
More souls go to hell for sins of the flesh than for any other reason. Fashions will much offend our Lord. People who serve God should not follow the fashions. The Church has no fashion. Our Lord is always the same. The sins of the world are very great.
And therefore, unfortunately, so many people going to the sin of flesh are abandoning God and are revolting against God. And this leads them to the eternal condemnation in hell. This is a truth. Well, therefore, the priests, the bishops, the Church has to alert people of the danger of the consequences of the sins of flesh. Of course, we have not to speak all the time on this topic. It would be not healthy and not sound. But we have to speak on time and to young people, to the adult people, to the world even, of the danger of the sins of flesh and of the negative consequences of this.
If men knew what eternity is, they would do everything to amend their lives. People are lost because they do not think of the death of our Lord and do penance.
The message of Fatima speaks to us of the deluge of impurity which would weigh down on humanity. And I believe we can see in the prophetic message of Fatima part of the drama of our own century, which is seen especially in the sins of impurity which are presented and encouraged even as no longer even sins, no longer even offensive to God. And when I was recently in the United States, I saw amongst the students a slogan which said that porn kills, and it kills love. And I think that's a powerful statement, both at the human and the supernatural level, that this deluge of impurity of which Our Lady warns us threatens to kill supernatural life in our souls and to kill our capacity for love. In this we see the beauty of the prophetic message of Our Lady.
Many marriages are not of God and do not please our Lord. The world is full of war and discords. War is a punishment for sin. I cannot at present avert the justice of my Son from the world. Penance is necessary. If people amend their lives, our Lord will even yet save the world. But if not, punishment will come. You must pray much of sinners, and for priests and religious. Priests should concern themselves only with things of the Church. Priests must be very, very pure.
And this is a work of mercy. Really, this is mercy. To alert people, please, don't follow this way. Don't continue to go to this way of the sins of flesh, because you are separating yourself from God. You are approaching really the danger of the eternal condemnation. We have to alert them, and this is with love, with concern for them. Not in a tone of condemnation, because we cannot condemn, we have not to condemn people, but we have to condemn the lie, the evil, this of course. And so we are in this way helping the people. We are merciful to them. And when a bishop and a priest is doing the contrary and say, okay, sins of flesh is not so bad, you can use these and be friend of God. This is a lie. This is a crime, a spiritual crime, because this bishop and this priest are confirming the people in living against the will of God, in living in a revolt against God. It is cruel. This behavior is not merciful. And this is a behavior of the merciless Pharisees and scribes.
Disobedience of priests and religious to their superiors displeases our Lord very much. If the government would leave the Church in peace and give liberty to religion, it would have God's blessing.
On the evening of the 20th of February 1920, the parish priest, Dr. Dos Rios, had visited her and heard her confession. Jacintha wanted to receive Holy Communion, as she said she would soon die. The priest promised to bring it next morning. Jacintha died peacefully during that night. After her death, Jacintha's body remained in an open coffin for 3 days in the sacristy of the Church of the Holy Angels. Pilgrims started to visit the church, and the priest let them see the body, for which they showed a deep devotion and respect. They noticed that her lips and cheeks were a beautiful pink. It did not seem as if she was dead at all. Before Jacintha's little body was closed in its coffin, the priest and pilgrims noticed the beautiful perfume that her body exuded. In September 1935, the mortal remains of Jacintha were returned to Fatima. When her casket was opened, she was found to be incorrupt, and then she was laid in the parish cemetery next to Francisco. In 1951, she was reburied again in the new basilica near the Corvadiera, and Francisco was also moved there in 1952. The graves of Saint Jacintha and Lucia are situated to the left of the high altar in the Basilica of Our Lady of the Rosary. Saint Francisco's grave is situated to the right of the high altar. The basilica contains 15 altars, one for every decade of the original mysteries of the Rosary.
To the Lord God,